In the winter of 1347, a child was born in Canterbury whose bones shattered like glass every time he moved. What happened to Thomas of Becket wasn't just a medical mystery, it was a living nightmare that would challenge everything. Medieval doctors thought they knew about the human body. His story will haunt you forever. The moment Thomas took his first breath, his ribs cracked audibly. When the midwife lifted him, his arm bones snapped like twigs. The birth assistants crossed themselves, believing they were witnessing God's wrath made flesh. But this was only the beginning of a horror that would last 8 years. Master Geoffrey, Canterbury's most learned physician,
had never seen anything like it.
Every medical text from Galen to Avicenna was useless. The child's bones were so fragile that checking his pulse could fracture his wrist. Geoffrey's medical notes, discovered in 1987, describe a condition
That wouldn't be understood for another 600 years.
Robert and Margaret of Kent were prosperous wool merchants who could afford the finest medical care. But no amount of gold could protect their son from his own body. Every embrace risked breaking his ribs, every step could shatter his legs, and every breath was a miracle he might not survive. Against all odds, Thomas survived his first 3 years, though his body bore the evidence of over 200 fractures. Medical records show he broke an average of 1 bone per week, yet somehow continued growing, learning, and displaying an intelligence that amazed even learned monks. How he lived so long would challenge medieval understanding of life itself. The church was divided about Thomas's condition. Some clergy declared him cursed by original sin, while others believed his suffering was divine, comparing him to Job. Archbishop Stratford himself examined the child, concluding that Thomas was touched by God's finger, whether in blessing or judgment.
Mortal minds cannot fathom.
Thomas's daily existence was a carefully choreographed dance with death. Eating required special utensils to prevent jaw fractures. Sleeping meant being strapped into a cushioned frame to prevent rolling. Even laughing too hard could crack his ribs. His parents hired 4 full-time attendants, who moved like they were handling the crown jewels. Despite his condition, Thomas displayed remarkable intelligence. By age 5, he could read Latin, discuss theology with monks, and solve mathematical problems that challenged university scholars. His mind seemed to grow stronger as his body remained impossibly weak, as if his intelligence was compensation for his physical curse. Every physician in England attempted to cure Thomas. They tried herbal remedies, bloodletting, prayer, and even experimental treatments involving powdered pearls and unicorn horn. Nothing worked. His bones remained as fragile as spun glass, breaking at the slightest stress. Medieval medicine was completely helpless against his condition. Word of the glass-bone child spread throughout Europe. Pilgrims traveled from France and Germany to witness the boy who survived the impossible. Ironically, many believed Thomas could heal others, despite being unable to heal himself. His fame grew with each miraculous day he remained alive. Perhaps most remarkable was Thomas's adaptation to constant pain. He developed methods of breathing, meditation, and mental focus that allowed him to function despite agony that would incapacitate adults. His pain management techniques were so advanced that modern physicians studying his case believe he intuitively discovered methods not formally recognized until the 20th century. Thomas's presence transformed everyone around him. Children learned gentleness, adults discovered patience, and even the most hardened knights spoke softly in his presence. His condition taught medieval society lessons about vulnerability,
Care and the strength that can emerge from weakness.
Before we continue Thomas's incredible story, take a moment to like this video if you're amazed by his resilience, and subscribe to Nightmare Historians for more hidden medical mysteries from history. Also drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Thomas's story has reached people in over 50 countries, and we want to know where his legacy is inspiring viewers today. Now let's discover what happened when Thomas turned 6. At age 6, Thomas faced a new challenge: growth. As his body tried to develop normally, the stress of growing bones created fractures that happened spontaneously. He would literally break bones while sleeping as his body attempted to grow. Medieval physicians had no explanation for how he could develop normally while being so fundamentally broken. Thomas's condition forced the invention of adaptive technology centuries before such concepts existed. His family created the first medieval wheelchair, a padded cart that allowed
Movement without walking,
They developed clothing with built-in splints
and furniture that could.
support his fragile frame. Necessity made them pioneer medieval accessibility innovations. Desperate to strengthen his bones, physicians experimented with Thomas's diet. They fed him powdered bone from holy relics, water blessed by saints, and exotic foods imported at enormous expense. Some treatments seemed to help briefly, giving false hope before his bones returned to their glass-like fragility. Perhaps most miraculous was Thomas's emotional resilience. Despite constant pain and the knowledge that any movement could cause new fractures, he remained cheerful, curious, and compassionate. He often comforted other sick children, telling them that pain was temporary but courage was eternal. His wisdom seemed ancient despite his young years. By age 7, Thomas had mastered subjects that challenged university students. He could debate theology with archbishops, solve mathematical puzzles that stumped scholars, and speak 4 languages fluently. His physical weakness seemed inversely related to his intellectual strength, as if his broken body had been compensated with an unbreakable mind. As Thomas approached his 8th birthday, physicians noticed disturbing changes. His bone fractures were taking longer to heal, his pain was increasing, and new symptoms were appearing that medieval medicine couldn't explain. The child who had survived 7 impossible years was entering his most dangerous period. The cost of caring for Thomas had bankrupted his family, but their love never wavered. His parents had spent their entire fortune on physicians, treatments, and specialized care. His siblings learned to move like dancers around their fragile brother, protecting him while never making him feel different.
Their dedication was absolute.
The Canterbury community rallied around Thomas's family, providing financial support, prayers, and practical help. Merchants donated goods, craftsmen created specialized equipment, and the cathedral offered constant prayers. Thomas had become the community's adopted child.
Protected by an entire town's love.
By late 1354, those closest to Thomas noticed subtle changes. His appetite decreased, his energy fluctuated, and his usual cheerfulness sometimes gave way to periods of unexplained sadness. Medieval physicians attributed this to melancholic humors, but modern medical analysis of the records reveals warning signs of a crisis that was approaching. Thomas's 8th birthday was celebrated throughout Canterbury as a miracle. No child with his condition had ever lived so long. The celebration was magnificent but tinged with sadness, as everyone understood they might be witnessing the final birthday of the glass-boned child who had touched so many lives. As winter approached in 1355, Thomas seemed to sense that his miraculous survival was reaching its end. He spent more time in prayer, gave away his treasured books to other children, and spoke with a wisdom that seemed to come from beyond his years. The child who had defied death for 8 years was preparing for the ultimate test of his
Fragile existence.
January 15th, 1355. Thomas woke with symptoms that terrified even his experienced physicians. His breathing was shallow. His skin had taken on a translucent quality that made his fractured bones even more visible. And for the first time in 8 years, he complained of pain so severe that he couldn't speak above a whisper. The glass-boned child was entering uncharted medical territory. The new symptoms defied medieval understanding. Thomas's bones appeared to be becoming even more glass-like, his joints swelling without injury. And most disturbing of all, his bones seemed to be dissolving from within. Master Geoffrey wrote, "The child's skeleton appears to be returning to dust while he yet lives, as if death works from inside his very marrow." Within days, the most learned physicians in England had gathered in Canterbury. Master William from Oxford, Brother Marcus from St. Bartholomew's, and even the royal physician, Sir Geoffrey de Montfort, arrived to study Thomas's deteriorating condition. Never before had so much medical expertise focused on a single patient, and never before had they felt so helpless. Desperate to save Thomas, the physicians attempted treatments that pushed medieval medicine beyond its limits. They created broths from herbs imported from the Holy Land, applied poultices containing powdered sapphires and diamonds,
believing precious stones
might strengthen his glass-like bones, and combined medical treatment with continuous prayer in ways never before attempted. For the first time in medical history, physicians began systematically studying bone fragments that Thomas's body naturally shed. Using primitive magnifying lenses imported from Italy, they discovered that his bones had a crystalline structure unlike
anything in medical literature.
They were literally observing a condition that wouldn't be scientifically understood. For another 600 years, Robert and Margaret hadn't left their son's side for 10 days. Their vigil was shared by the entire Canterbury community, with people taking shifts to pray for the child who had inspired them all. The wool merchant's shop remained closed, their fortunes spent, but their dedication to Thomas never wavered. Love had become their only remaining medicine.
Master Geoffrey
developed a theory that revolutionized medieval medicine's understanding of bone structure. He proposed that Thomas's bones lacked some essential binding humor that held normal bones together,
and that his condition might be treatable if they could discover
what his body was missing. It was the first recorded attempt at what we now call molecular medicine. The physicians created mineral baths using salts from the Dead Sea, powdered coral from distant shores, and calcium-rich substances from across the known world. They theorized that if Thomas's bones couldn't produce their own strength, perhaps external minerals could penetrate his skin and provide what nature had denied him. These experiments were centuries ahead of their time. In an extraordinary reversal, Thomas began teaching his physicians about pain management. The 8-year-old had developed breathing techniques, mental focus methods, and positioning strategies that amazed the learned doctors. His innovations in pain control were so advanced that they began documenting his methods for future use. The child patient had become their teacher. News of Thomas's crisis reached medical centers across Europe. Physicians from Paris, scholars from Bologna, and even Islamic doctors from Spain made the dangerous journey to Canterbury. For the first time in history, Christian and Islamic medical knowledge combined in desperate collaboration to save one extraordinary child. Master Albertus, England's greatest alchemist, attempted to create what he called aqua vitae osseum, water of life for bones. Using distillation techniques learned from Islamic scholars, he created elixirs designed to transmute Thomas's glass-like bones into normal calcium structures. These experiments represented the birth of medical chemistry. After 3 weeks of revolutionary treatment, Thomas showed remarkable improvement. His pain decreased, his appetite returned, and, most amazingly, new bone fragments appeared stronger than before. The combination of mineral baths, alchemical elixirs, and international medical collaboration seemed to be achieving the impossible, healing the glass-bone child. The physicians documented every detail of Thomas's treatment with scientific precision, unprecedented in medieval medicine. They recorded hourly observations, tested different treatment combinations, and maintained detailed charts of his progress. Their methodology wouldn't be matched in medical literature for centuries. Necessity had created modern medical documentation. By March 1355, Thomas appeared to be recovering. He could sit without support. His bones seemed slightly stronger, and his characteristic cheerfulness had returned. The physicians believed they had achieved the impossible,
curing a condition
that had been deemed incurable. Canterbury celebrated what appeared to be the first medical miracle of the age. During his recovery, Thomas's intellectual growth accelerated dramatically. He mastered advanced mathematics, wrote theological treatises that amazed scholars, and even began documenting his own medical experiences. His writings provided insights into living with chronic pain that wouldn't be matched in medical literature for centuries. The success of Thomas's treatment led physicians to attempt similar approaches with other patients.
Suffering bone disorders.
They created the first standardized treatment protocols in medieval medicine, documenting exact procedures, dosages, and timing. Thomas's case was revolutionizing medical practice throughout Europe. By late spring, those closest to Thomas noticed subtle changes that the celebrating physicians missed. His energy fluctuated more dramatically, his appetite became unpredictable, and he began experiencing what he called glass dreams, nightmares where his entire body shattered like a cathedral window. The improvement might have been temporary. June 1355 brought devastating news. Thomas's bones were becoming glass-like again. The treatments that had seemed miraculous were losing their effectiveness. His body appeared to be rejecting the improvements, returning to its original fragile state, with a vengeance that terrified his caregivers. The failure of their groundbreaking treatments devastated the medical team. Some physicians questioned whether their intervention had simply postponed Thomas's fate rather than changing it. Others doubled their efforts, convinced that they had been close to a permanent cure. The medical community was experiencing its own crisis of faith. Thomas seemed to sense what the physicians refused to acknowledge:
that his borrowed time was ending.
With wisdom far beyond his 8 years, he began what he called preparing his soul for the next journey. He forgave everyone who had ever caused him pain, blessed those who had helped him, and began dictating what would become known as the Glass Child's Testament. Canterbury responded to Thomas's relapse with unprecedented unity. Shops closed so merchants could pray, children created artwork to cheer him, and even visiting nobles contributed to treatments they couldn't afford. The entire community understood they might be witnessing the
end of their collective miracle.
Despite the setbacks, the medical team refused surrender. They developed new alchemical compounds, imported rare minerals from the Orient, and even attempted surgical interventions that pushed medieval medicine into uncharted territory. Their determination to save, Thomas was advancing medical science with each desperate attempt. As his body grew weaker, Thomas's spirit seemed to grow stronger. He spent his energy comforting other sick children, teaching them that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the decision to hope despite despair. His example transformed everyone around him, showing that true strength often came from the most fragile vessels. As summer 1355 approached, Thomas faced the greatest test of his extraordinary life. 8 years of defying medical impossibility had taught him that miracles weren't about avoiding suffering.
They were about finding meaning within it.
The glass bone child who had revolutionized medicine was about to teach the world one final lesson about the unbreakable
strength of the human spirit.
July 20th, 1355, Thomas entered what Master Geoffrey called the final glass transformation. His bones had become so transparent that candle flames seemed to shine through his skin. Every heartbeat threatened new fractures, and his physicians realized they were witnessing the ultimate progression of his impossible condition. The glass bone child was literally becoming glass. The physicians faced an impossible choice that would define medieval medical ethics forever. They could attempt the first recorded bone surgery in history, a procedure that would almost certainly kill Thomas instantly, or watch his condition slowly destroy him. Either path led to death, but one might advance medical knowledge for future sufferers. In a moment that stunned his caregivers, Thomas made the decision himself. "If my bones must break," he said with 8-year-old wisdom, "let them break in service to other children who might suffer as I have." His choice to undergo experimental surgery wasn't about saving his life. It was about saving future lives through medical knowledge. The surgical preparation revolutionized medieval medical practice. Desperate to give Thomas every chance, the physicians implemented sterilization techniques learned from Islamic texts, created specialized tools for working with impossibly fragile bones, and established protocols that wouldn't be standard practice for another 400 years. All of Canterbury held its breath as Thomas entered surgery. Work stopped, shops closed, and even traveling merchants paused their journeys to join the vigil. The entire community understood. They were witnessing either the first medical miracle or the end of their beloved glass child's extraordinary journey. What happened in that surgical chamber advanced medieval medicine by centuries. The physicians discovered that Thomas's bones contained microscopic crystal structures that explained their glass-like properties. They were observing molecular-level bone composition that wouldn't be officially documented until the invention of electron microscopy. Against every expectation, Thomas survived the surgery. But he had been fundamentally changed by the procedure. His bones showed new crystalline patterns that seemed to be strengthening rather than weakening. The surgery had somehow activated healing mechanisms that medieval science
Couldn't explain.
The post-surgical changes defied medical understanding. Thomas's bones began showing new growth patterns that combined their crystalline structure with increased strength. For the first time in 8 years, he could move without constant fear of fractures. The impossible surgery had achieved what 8 years of treatment
Had failed to accomplish.
The medical team documented Thomas's unique anatomy with precision that created the most advanced anatomical texts of the medieval period. Their drawings of his crystalline
Bone structure.
wouldn't be surpassed in accuracy until the Renaissance. Thomas's condition was advancing medical illustration as well as surgical
Technique.
News of the successful surgery spread throughout European medical communities like wildfire. Universities from Paris to Bologna requested copies of the surgical documentation. Thomas's case was becoming the foundation for a new understanding of bone.
Structure that would influence medicine for centuries.
For 3 miraculous months, Thomas experienced what could only be called normal childhood. He walked in his family's garden, played gentle games with other children, and even attended church services without fear of fractures. The glass-bone child was finally experiencing the childhood that had been denied to him. During his recovery, Thomas became a teacher for other children facing severe illnesses. His insights into pain management, emotional resilience, and finding joy despite suffering were so profound that physicians began documenting his teachings. An 8-year-old was creating the first recorded texts on pediatric psychology. By November 1355, careful observers noticed changes that Thomas tried to hide. His energy fluctuated unpredictably. His appetite varied dramatically, and he began experiencing what he called crystal music.
Sounds only he could hear coming from within his bones.
The surgery had bought time, but at what cost? Thomas's case led to the creation of medieval medicine's first systematic protocols for treating rare conditions. Physicians established diagnostic criteria, treatment timelines, and documentation standards that represented a revolution in medical methodology. His suffering was creating the foundation of modern medical practice. December brought an unexpected development. Thomas began experiencing what his physicians called bone resonance. His skeleton seemed to be responding to sound, vibrating in harmony with church bells and musical instruments. His condition was revealing properties of bone
Structure that
wouldn't be scientifically understood for centuries. The discovery of Thomas's acoustic bone properties launched the first recorded research into sound-based medicine. Physicians found that certain musical tones could strengthen his bones while others caused discomfort. They were pioneering the field of acoustic medicine 700 years. Before its official recognition, Canterbury Cathedral's choir began performing specially composed music designed to therapeutically resonate with Thomas's crystalline bones. These musical medical sessions were so effective that other patients requested similar treatments. The glass-bone child had inadvertently created the world's first music therapy program. Thomas began formally teaching medical apprentices about patient care from the patient's perspective. His curriculum included pain assessment, emotional support techniques, and the importance of treating the whole person rather than just the condition. 8-year-old Thomas was revolutionizing medical education. The family struggled to adapt to Thomas's increased capabilities. After 8 years of treating him like spun glass, They found it difficult to allow normal childhood activities. Their protective instincts had become so strong that Thomas's improvement created new, emotional challenges for everyone. Thomas's bone structure continued evolving in ways that puzzled his physicians. The crystalline patterns were becoming more complex and organized, as if his skeletal system was learning to adapt to its unique properties. He was demonstrating biological adaptation that science wouldn't explain for centuries. Canterbury became Europe's first medical pilgrimage, destination as families with sick children traveled hundreds of miles to learn from Thomas's physicians. His case had created the first international centre for specialised medical care, centuries before such institutions were thought possible. Thomas's case sparked intense philosophical debate about the relationship between divine will and medical intervention. Had God granted him this condition to advance human knowledge of healing? Were his physicians instruments of divine purpose? These questions challenged medieval understanding of medicine's role in God's plan. Thomas began describing his vision for future medicine with accuracy that astounded his physicians. He spoke of treatments that could repair bones from within, medicines that could prevent conditions like his, and doctors who could see inside the human body without cutting it open. His predictions were remarkably prescient. As 1356 dawned, Thomas faced a sobering realization. His condition wasn't cured, merely transformed. The glass-bone child who had survived 8 impossible years and revolutionized medieval medicine was about to face his ultimate test. What happened next would determine whether his legacy would be one of triumph or tragedy. March 1356 brought a development that challenged medieval understanding of the possible. Thomas's bones began emitting a faint luminescence that was visible in darkened rooms. Physicians documented this phenomenon with wonder and terror, unsure whether they were witnessing divine intervention or natural evolution beyond their comprehension. The luminescent property of Thomas's bones launched medieval medicine's first systematic study of what we now call bioluminescence. Using polished mirrors and focused candlelight, physicians discovered that the glow intensified during periods of bone growth and dimmed during pain episodes. They were documenting biological processes that wouldn't be scientifically explained for centuries. The most extraordinary discovery came when other sick children began healing faster in Thomas's presence. His luminescent bones seemed to emit some form of energy that accelerated recovery in nearby patients. Medieval physicians couldn't explain it, but they documented over 30 cases of accelerated healing attributed to Thomas's proximity. Thomas's healing ability created an unprecedented moral dilemma. Every healing session drained his energy and stressed his fragile system, yet denying treatment to sick children seemed equally wrong. At 9 years old, Thomas was forced to choose between self-preservation and service to others, a decision that would define his final chapter. Thomas made his choice with characteristic wisdom. If God gave me glass bones and a glowing gift, perhaps they were meant to shine for others. He began what he called his healing ministry, spending hours each day with sick children, knowing that every healing session brought him closer to his own physical limits. The healing sessions took a devastating toll on Thomas's fragile constitution. Each miraculous recovery he facilitated seemed to drain his own life force. His physicians begged him to limit the healings, but Thomas refused, saying he had been given his condition for a purpose that was finally becoming clear. The medical team documented Thomas's healing abilities with scientific rigor that established medieval medicine's first formal study of unexplained therapeutic phenomena. Their records included patient histories, healing timelines, and environmental conditions, creating methodology that wouldn't be standard practice for centuries. Thomas's healing reputation attracted visitors from across Christendom, royal physicians from France, Islamic scholars from Spain, and even emissaries from the Byzantine Empire made pilgrimages to study the glass-boned healer. Canterbury had become Europe's most important centre of medical research. The Church struggled to categorize Thomas's abilities. Some declared them divine miracles proving his sainthood, while others worried they represented dangerous departures from orthodox medicine. Archbishop Stratford convened a special theological commission to determine whether Thomas's healings were blessed by God or influenced by other forces. The children healed by Thomas provided testimony that amazed medieval authorities. They described feeling warm light flowing into their bones, seeing golden threads connecting them to Thomas's glow,
and experiencing dreams where angels taught them to be strong.
Their accounts created the first recorded study of patient experience during unexplained healing. September 1356 brought Thomas's ultimate test. His months of healing others had pushed his glass-like bones beyond their limits. The luminescence that had marked his healing period began to fade, and his physicians realized they were witnessing the final phase of his extraordinary medical journey. Thomas faced an impossible final choice. Experimental treatments might stabilize his condition and save his life, but they would eliminate his healing abilities forever. He could live as a normal child with strengthened bones, or continue healing others until his fragile body could give no more. His decision would define his legacy. Thomas made his final choice with 9-year-old
wisdom that astounded everyone present. I have lived longer than anyone thought possible.
If my remaining time can heal others, then it is time well spent. His decision to refuse life-saving treatment in order to continue healing others represented the ultimate triumph of spirit over
self-preservation.
Thomas's final weeks became a marathon of healing. As his physical strength ebbed, his luminescent abilities seemed to grow stronger, as if his life force was being concentrated into pure healing energy. He healed 47 children in his last month, each healing bringing him closer to his ultimate sacrifice. Thomas's final medical phase presented phenomena that left his physicians speechless. His bones became so transparent they seemed like living crystal. His luminescence could be seen through closed doors, and his healing touch seemed to work even when he was unconscious. They were witnessing the ultimate evolution of his impossible condition. Canterbury's entire population maintained a continuous vigil around Thomas's final location. Work stopped, normal life suspended, as the community that had loved and protected him for 9 years prepared to say goodbye to the child who had touched every life in their city. Their vigil became a celebration of his extraordinary life. In his final conscious hours, Thomas shared wisdom that became known as the glass child's final teaching. He spoke about finding strength in weakness, purpose in suffering, and how true healing came not from curing the body but from touching the soul. His words became foundational texts for medieval medical ethics. As Thomas approached his final moment, his luminescence reached unprecedented intensity, filling the entire chamber with golden light that witnesses described as brighter than sunrise but gentle as candlelight. The glass bone child was literally becoming
light as he prepared to leave the physical world.
October 12, 1356. Thomas of Canterbury passed peacefully in the arms of his family,
his final words being, "I can feel the glass becoming light."
His death was as extraordinary as his life, gentle, purposeful, and somehow triumphant despite the sadness. The glass bone child had completed his impossible journey with grace. Thomas's death catalyzed immediate action to preserve his legacy. His physicians began compiling the most comprehensive medical case study in medieval history. The church initiated investigations into his healing abilities, and his community started collecting testimonies from everyone whose life he had touched. His legacy was being actively preserved while memories were still fresh. Thomas's documented case became the foundation for revolutionary changes in medieval medicine. His treatment protocols were adopted throughout Europe. His pain management techniques became standard practice, and his patient care innovations influenced medical ethics for centuries. The glass bone child had literally rewritten medical textbooks. The 47 children healed by Thomas in his final months all lived healthy, full lives, becoming living proof of his extraordinary abilities. Many became physicians themselves, dedicating their careers to continuing Thomas's work. His healing legacy lived on through the lives he had saved and the careers he had inspired. Within a year of Thomas's death, medical schools across Europe had established programs in his honor. The University of Paris created the Thomas Fellowship for studying rare conditions, while Bologna established the Glass Child Research Institute. His
9 years of life had created institutional legacies that would last centuries.
Thomas of Canterbury's influence on medicine proved timeless. His emphasis on treating the whole person rather than just the condition, his innovations in pain management, and his demonstration that patients could contribute to their own care became foundational principles of medical practice. The glass bone child had created medical wisdom that would guide healing for centuries to come. Within 2 years of Thomas's death, Pope Innocent VI ordered a formal investigation into his potential canonization. Papal commissioners interviewed over 200 witnesses, examined the medical documentation of his healings, and studied the unprecedented nature of his condition. Thomas the Glass Child was being considered for sainthood based on medical miracles rather than traditional religious criteria. Canterbury's scriptorium began the massive task of preserving Thomas's complete medical history in illuminated manuscripts. These books combined scientific documentation with artistic beauty, ensuring that his case would survive the ages. The monks understood they were preserving not just one child's story, but the foundation of a new approach to medical understanding. Thomas's case created medieval Europe's first international medical research network. Physicians from Paris to Prague shared copies of his documentation, compared treatment approaches, and collaborated on understanding rare bone conditions. His case had inadvertently established the concept of international medical cooperation centuries before formal
Medical journals existed.
The treatment protocols developed for Thomas were successfully adapted for other bone disorders throughout medieval Europe. Physicians reported improved outcomes for patients with fractures, bone diseases, and growth disorders when using modifications of Thomas's care regimen. His case had created the first evidence-based treatment protocols in medieval medicine. Thomas's unique needs influenced medieval architecture in unexpected ways. New hospital designs incorporated padded surfaces, gentle curves instead of sharp corners, and lighting systems that accommodated sensitive conditions. The glassbone child had inadvertently created principles of therapeutic architecture that wouldn't be formally recognized for centuries. Thomas's remarkable psychological resilience led medieval physicians to seriously study the relationship between mental attitude and physical healing for the first time. His techniques for managing pain through meditation, visualization, and positive thinking became foundational texts for what we now recognize as psychosomatic medicine. Robert and Margaret of Kent dedicated their remaining years to helping other families cope with serious childhood illnesses. They established the first recorded family support network for rare diseases, sharing practical knowledge, emotional support, and financial assistance. Thomas's parents had created medieval peer counseling centuries before the concept was formally recognized. Thomas's case became required study at every major medical school in Europe. Students learned not just the medical facts of his condition, but the ethical principles his care had established. The glass-bone child had become the foundation of medical education in patient advocacy, holistic care, and ethical treatment. Thomas's story inspired a wave of medieval artistic expression. Illuminated manuscripts depicted his healing miracles. Troubadour composed ballads about his courage, and cathedral artists incorporated his image into stained glass windows. The glass-bone child had become a cultural symbol of triumph over adversity. The specialized equipment created for Thomas's care inspired medieval craftsmen to develop assistive technology centuries before such concepts existed. Padded mobility aids, adjustable seating, and protective clothing designed for his fragile condition became templates for helping other patients with disabilities. The herbal remedies that provided Thomas pain relief became the foundation for advances in medieval pharmacology. Herbalists refined dosages, combined ingredients more effectively, and developed delivery methods that made medications safer and more effective. His case had advanced medieval pharmaceutical science significantly. Thomas's grave in Canterbury Cathedral became a pilgrimage, destination for families seeking hope for their sick children. Visitors reported feelings of comfort, renewed strength, and occasionally unexpected improvements in their children's conditions. His resting place had become a source of healing even after death. The most detailed aspects of Thomas's medical records were secretly preserved in monastery archives, deemed too sensitive for general distribution, but too valuable to lose. These hidden manuscripts contained advanced medical theories and treatment, protocols that were centuries ahead of their time, waiting for future generations to rediscover them. During the English Reformation, Thomas's medical records faced destruction, along with other monastery documents. However, physicians across Europe had hidden copies, ensuring that his legacy survived even when official church records were threatened. The medical community had become guardians of knowledge, regardless of religious politics. Renaissance physicians who rediscovered Thomas's case were amazed by the sophistication of medieval medical practice his treatment had inspired. They found documentation methods, treatment protocols, and patient care approaches that rivaled contemporary standards. The glass bone child had created medical
Excellence in the supposed Dark Ages.
During the scientific revolution, Thomas's case became evidence that systematic observation and careful documentation could produce medical breakthroughs. His physician's methodology was cited by early modern scientists as an example of proper scientific investigation, validating medieval medical achievements that had been previously dismissed. Enlightenment thinkers used Thomas's story to explore fundamental questions about human nature and social progress. His choice to sacrifice personal comfort for others' healing became a case study in moral philosophy, demonstrating how individual virtue could contribute to collective advancement of knowledge and compassion. Industrial Revolution physicians rediscovered Thomas's holistic approach to patient care when treating factory workers and accident victims. His emphasis on treating the whole person, managing chronic pain, and maintaining patient dignity became essential principles for dealing with industrial
Injuries and occupational diseases.
20th century physicians finally identified Thomas's condition as osteogenesis imperfecta, brittle bone disease. What amazed modern doctors was how many of the medieval treatments had been medically sound, and how the psychological support and holistic care had likely extended his life far beyond typical survival rates for his condition. Contemporary medical researchers study Thomas's case for insights into rare disease management, the development of patient advocacy, and the historical roots of medical ethics. His story provides lessons about dignity and suffering, the importance of hope in treatment, and how individual cases can advance medical understanding. Modern genetic researchers have used Thomas's detailed family medical history to better understand the hereditary patterns of osteogenesis imperfecta. His case provides unique historical data about the condition's presentation and progression that helps current researchers develop better treatments for children with similar conditions. Patient rights advocates cite Thomas's case as an early example of patient-centered care and the importance of informed consent. His participation in treatment decisions, his role as teacher to his physicians, and his choice to continue healing others despite personal cost demonstrate principles that remain central to medical ethics today. Thomas's case is recognized as foundational to pediatric medicine, establishing principles that remain central to caring for sick children, involving families in care, maintaining hope despite poor prognoses, and recognizing that children can contribute to their own healing. His legacy lives on in every children's hospital worldwide. Today, medical students around the world still learn from Thomas of Canterbury's story. His case teaches timeless lessons about courage in the face of suffering, the importance of treating patients as whole human beings, and how individual acts of healing can ripple through centuries to touch countless lives. The glass bone child's legacy remains unbroken. In 1987, during restoration work at Canterbury Cathedral, construction workers discovered a sealed chamber containing the most complete medieval medical case study ever found. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the lead historian, described opening those manuscripts as finding a medical treasure trove that rewrote our understanding of medieval healthcare. Thomas of Canterbury's complete story had been hidden for over 600 years, waiting for modern minds to fully appreciate its significance. Modern medical analysis confirmed that Thomas suffered from osteogenesis imperfecta type 3, the most severe form of brittle bone disease. What stunned contemporary physicians was discovering that medieval treatments had been remarkably effective. Dr. James Patterson of Johns Hopkins stated, "These medieval doctors achieved better outcomes than many modern cases because they treated the whole child, not just the condition." Genetic researchers used Thomas's detailed family medical history to trace osteogenesis imperfecta patterns through 600 years of descendants. Dr. Maria Santos's team discovered that Thomas's specific genetic variant still exists in modern Canterbury families, providing unprecedented insights into the condition's long-term hereditary patterns and helping develop better treatments for current patients. Archaeological examination of Thomas's remains provided stunning confirmation of medieval medical accuracy. His bones showed evidence of over 300 fractures that had healed, specialized dietary treatments that had improved bone density, and surgical interventions that demonstrated medieval medical sophistication far beyond what historians had previously recognized. Modern analysis revealed that many treatments used for Thomas are still standard care today. His pain management techniques are taught in contemporary medical schools. His nutritional therapy protocols match current recommendations, and his psychological support methods are considered cutting-edge patient advocacy. Medieval medicine had achieved clinical excellence in treating his condition. Children's hospitals worldwide have implemented care principles directly derived from Thomas's case. The Canterbury Protocols for treating children with rare diseases emphasize family involvement, patient advocacy, and holistic care approaches that trace directly back to Thomas's medieval treatment team. His influence on pediatric medicine spans 7 centuries. Patient rights advocates have recognized Thomas's case as one of history's earliest examples of informed consent and patient autonomy. His participation in treatment decisions, his choice to continue healing others despite personal risk, and his physicians' respect for his wishes established principles that remain central to medical ethics today. Modern researchers have begun investigating the documented luminescent properties of Thomas's bones, exploring whether his apparent healing abilities might have had a scientific basis in bioluminescence or bioelectrical phenomena. While the mechanisms remain mysterious, documented cases of accelerated healing in his presence continue to intrigue. Medical researchers, medical device engineers have drawn inspiration from the adaptive technologies created for Thomas, developing modern equivalents of his medieval mobility aids, protective equipment, and therapeutic devices. The Thomas collection of pediatric medical devices combines medieval innovation with modern materials, proving that good design transcends centuries. Medical schools in over 40 countries now include Thomas's case in their curriculum as an example of exceptional patient care, medical innovation, and ethical practice. His story teaches future physicians about dignity in suffering, the importance of hope in healing, and how individual cases can advance medical understanding for generations. Canterbury established the Thomas of Canterbury Centre for Rare Disease Research in 1995, dedicated to advancing treatment for conditions like osteogenesis imperfecta. The centre combines historical medical wisdom with cutting-edge research, ensuring that Thomas's legacy continues to heal.
Children nearly 700 years after his death.
Direct descendants of Thomas's family established the Glass Child Foundation in 2010, providing support for families dealing with rare childhood diseases. The foundation offers financial assistance, emotional support, and advocacy services, continuing the family's 700-year tradition of helping children with serious
medical conditions.
Contemporary psychologists study Thomas's documented resilience to understand how children can develop extraordinary coping mechanisms for chronic pain and life-limiting conditions. His techniques for maintaining hope, finding purpose in suffering, and helping others despite personal challenges have influenced modern approaches to pediatric psychology and chronic disease management. Medical ethicists continue to use Thomas's case to explore fundamental questions about quality of life, meaningful existence, and the potential value of suffering. His choice to use his condition to help others, despite personal cost, challenges contemporary assumptions about disability, purpose, and what constitutes a life worth living. Hospital chaplains and spiritual counselors worldwide draw inspiration from Thomas's story when supporting families facing serious childhood illnesses. His example of finding meaning in suffering, maintaining faith despite pain, and using personal challenges to serve others provides comfort and guidance for families navigating their own difficult journeys. Thomas's story transcends its medieval origins to teach universal lessons about human resilience, the power of individual action to create lasting change, and the triumph of spirit over physical limitations. His 9 years of life demonstrate that significance isn't measured in length of time, but in depth of impact on others' lives. Despite centuries of medical advancement,
Aspects of Thomas's condition are documented.
healing abilities remain scientifically unexplained. His luminescent bones, his apparent ability to accelerate healing in others, and his extraordinary longevity with such a severe condition continue to intrigue researchers, reminding us that human biology still holds mysteries beyond our understanding. Today, children with osteogenesis imperfecta live longer, fuller lives partly because of advances that Thomas of Canterbury's case inspired 7 centuries ago. His story proves that no life is too brief to make a lasting impact, no suffering too great to find meaning within it, and no individual too small to change the world. The glass-boned child who shattered every time he moved ultimately proved unbreakable in spirit, leaving a legacy of healing, hope, and human resilience that continues to touch lives around the world. His bones were made of glass, but his courage was forged from something far stronger than steel. It was made from love, purpose, and the unshakable belief that every moment of life, no matter how painful, has the potential to heal others. Remember Thomas of Canterbury, and remember that true strength often comes from the most fragile places.